So, good day, everybody. This is D Anime TV, and welcome to a redo of our Blender 101 class, the basic breakdown. I do hope, I do hope that in this tutorial you will have the basic knowledge on how to use Blender. And at the end of it, create something that is somewhat interesting. On the screen right now, let's extend this, is the basic specs. Good, good. With that out of the way, so once again, I'm going to officially welcome each and every single one of you, YouTube, Twitch, to this Blender tutorial. So without further ado, let us begin. So obviously, first thing you'll need to do is open up Blender. Nice. With Blender open, we have the current layout of Blender. Even though it seems to be a little bit intimidating at first, I assure you that it will not be too much of a challenge to understand. So, with that being said, let's try to break this up in a way that would be a little bit more simple for everyone to understand. So the first part, we have our display. Here's where most of the 3D stuff can be seen when modeling, when sculpting, when animating, to see all the things you have created thus far. This area, we will call it the layers. In the layers section, it gives you access to organize on what you would like to work on first. So you'll have some form of structure on your screen, and you will not have to worry about your screen being too cluttered when designing. So this window here is the object properties. In this, you'll be able to add, well, properties to your objects or designs. For example, you could add color, you can add particles, you can add effects, but we won't be going through too much of it just because this is the basics. Only a few things we'll be going through with the object properties. And last but not least, we have our timeline. And as the name suggests, it's a timeline for mainly animation. And that's about it. So not to worry too much about it. Right, so this concludes the layout of how Blender is currently split up upon opening. Right, so this is the objective of this first part of the tutorial. One, we have to do a preference check. Two, we already did the layout. Three, we'll be going through the view or the display navigation. Four, universal keys. Five, object navigation. Six, the items or objects. Seven, some small editing. Eight, modifiers. And nine, our first model, but it will not be in that exact order. Preference check. Now there's a couple things. When starting on Blender, there's a couple things that you need to check. I would advise also taking a screenshot of this just to help you all remember. The mouse verification, you have cycles verification. And number three would be for those who don't have a number pad either on their laptop or their keyboard. Going through the mouse verification. So in the Blender, we're going to edit, preferences, key mapping. Be this third one here, right? And on the first screen, on the preferences, ensure that this is selected. Nice. Now for cycles verification. So you're going to edit, preferences, systems, underneath cycles rendering device, you are selecting CUDA, ensure CUDA is selected, and then select either your graphic card or your processor. I advise clicking on the graphic card so it won't put too much strain on your processor because your processor is currently running other programs in the background. Right, and that helps with rendering in cycles because there is two different rendering engines. It helps with rendering in cycles, and also I believe it also helps with rendering in Eve as well. Great. Now moving on to the next option, and this is for those who do not have a number pad. Edit, preferences, input, edit number pad. What this does, as the name suggests, it basically emulates your number pad to the keys above the letters. Doing the emulated number pad is going to come in handy when navigating the entire display section of the program. Nice. But since I have a number pad, I don't have to use this. Great. Now let's move on. What is next on our list? Let's move on to some view navigation. Now this is where we will be controlling how we see the object within the display section of the screen. So holding shift and middle click or the mouse wheel, you can be able to move the view. We hold middle click alone or mouse wheel, you'll be able to rotate the view. And once you use the scroll wheel, you'll be able to zoom in, you'll be able to zoom out. So let's test that out. So on the display section of the screen, we hold in shift, and we hold middle click or mouse wheel. Make sure you hold it down when you hit the click. We get to move the entire display. So you can test it out for yourself. I have a slightly faulty mouse. Great. If we hold the scroll wheel alone, and then move the mouse, we get the rotation. Great. Nice. And now if we use the scrolling feature of the mouse, zoom out, zoom in. That is fine. Please be advised when editing on the screen, ensure that the mouse itself is on the display, because I had some problems with that before, but the mouse wasn't on display to move it. That's beginner errors. It is fine. So ensure that your mouse is on the display. Great. Nice. So let's continue. So moving on, we have, what shall I label it? We have the different views, the front view, the side view, the top view, the opposite, to make it flat. Right, for those who have a number pad, using number pad we have one, which is the front view, 3, which is the side view. 7, we have the top view. 9, which basically flips on the opposite side. So even if you're in the front view and you hit 9, you go to the back view. You have this side. You hit 9, you go to the other side. You have the top view. Hit 9, go to the bottom view. And then we have 5. What 5 does is change your screen or the display to fully 3D to completely flat object. Please bear in mind that each one has its own benefits. So now going back to the notes. So for the emulated number pad, it'll be the same for you, but you will be using the numbers above the letters. So instead of number pad 1, you'll be using just number 1, 3 for side, 7 for top, 9 for opposite, 5 for flat. And here's where things get somewhat, I guess, different or from using the number pad compared to using an emulated number pad would be this thing down here, which is the center view on object, which on a number pad will be the full stop. And what that does, let's say you have been doing some stuff and you have multiple items on the screen. And this is just for example. Hey, don't worry, I'll be showing you how to do the whole duplicate and stuff afterwards. This is an example. Let's say we're working on this and we want to move to this one and have this one mini center. Yes, you can easily just shift this across, but when it comes to modeling and stuff, it's not going to be completely centered, especially when you're doing some other, have a lot of stuff on the screen. So what you can do, just going back across here, what you can do is select an item and press the full stop key on the number pad, and that brings you straight to the next object that you want to work on. Unfortunately, I have not found a way to use the emulated number pad to bring myself across to that. So more than likely it's going to be a little bit of a trial and error for those who do not have a number pad on your keyboard. It's not that major, but it does come in handy a lot depending on what you're working on. Great. Nice. So what's next on our list? So we've seen the view navigation. Let's see what's next. I think before we come to universal keys, let's go across to object navigation, because it have a couple of these things inside here, which is the movement and stuff that will tie into the universal keys for you all to see. So in the object navigation, I would advise taking a screenshot of this one as well. Great. So let's start with the first batch on this thing, which is the left click to select, as we already changed it before. A to select all, and right for options. Let's start with those. Great. So I'm gonna just remove these for now. Alright, and get myself right back to the center. Nice. Great. So as it says, once you click, that means you select. That means this object here is now selected. You must click on a particular item in order to move it or have any form of editing towards it. Great. If you want to select all of the items, you can just press A and be able to move all of them at once. And there is one more thing I did forget to add into the notes, which I should add a little bit later on, would be selecting more than one items at a time. If you don't want to select all, you want to select one or two, what you can do is hold down the shift button, left click, now we have two items selected, then left click again, shift, hold on shift and left click again, now three items is selected. Great. Now let's move on. And here is our glorious friend. The movements of the items what is on your display screen. Nice. So let's get to it. We have G, which allows you to move the item. If you tap G and X, you move on the X axis. I think I should zoom in as well. If you tap G and Y, you'll be moving on the Y axis. If you tap G and come on, and if you tap G and Z, you're moving on the Z axis. I think I should explain a little bit of the axes as well while I'm at it. So let's just select the cube only. Right? In a 3D space, it is broken up into the X, the Y, and the Z axis. But the Z axis would be from top to bottom. X axis, if you're looking from the front, it'll be from left to right, and the Y axis will be from forward to back. Let us move on to the actual movement of the object that is currently selected. So, if you press G, which is the movement tool, we can move it around. And this goes for all objects. All objects. Move it around, move around. Great? Nice. However, and this comes in handy, especially when it comes to modeling, if you want to move something on a particular axis, and this comes in handy a lot. If you want to move it on a particular axis, you press G, which is to move it. Let's do it again, G, which is to move it. And let's say we want to move it across to the x-axis, press X. You can move across to the x-axis, Y, y-axis, and Z, the z-axis. And I think that'll help as well when moving around items. You can also go to the different screens, different displays, which is the front. Currently, right now is the front view, so we can actually move this around here, so it does not move anywhere on the y-axis. That also helps as well. If you put it on the side view, it doesn't move anywhere on the x-axis. If you go into top view, it does not move anywhere on the z-axis. All this help as well when it comes to modeling, and especially, I'm going to say it again, especially animation. So let's move on. So from here, we have the rotation, which is R, and it does the same thing as well with rotation on a particular axis, which is R then X, R and Y to rotate on the Y-axis, R and Z to rotate on the Z-axis. So let's see that in play. I'm just going to come here, nice. So we hold R, it rotates. If we hold R and X, it rotates on the X-axis. Zoom in a little bit more so everyone can see. R and X rotate on the X-axis. R and Y rotate on the Y-axis. R and Z rotate on the Z-axis. So moving on to scale. So if you hit scale, scales like this. With S, X, X, sorry, S and Y, scale on the Y-axis, S and Z, scale on the Z-axis. Great. Now, there's two more things before we continue. I'm sure that you all realize by now that when I was scaling, moving, or rotating, you realize that the object ended up moving back to its original position. And on your screen, it doesn't seem to go back to original position. But that's fine, no fret. What I end up doing was pressing right click in the movement or the scale or the rotation to instantly send back to its previous position. So let's try that out. Let's say if we were scaling and right click, it goes back into its original size. If we're rotating and right click, it goes back to its original size, original thing. And if we're moving, we right click, it goes back to original position. Right? But if it's somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in the corner of the screen or what the case may be, it is fine, or rotate or scale oddly, it is fine, not to worry. What you can do is either press X or delete to delete the object. Because I have to show you how to import the object anyway. So let's select the object. I either press X, which brings up the a delete option or delete suggestion, and this helps when you work with many stuff and you don't want to accidentally delete anything. Although that will be fine because you can always step back. It's fine, nothing wrong with that. And you just click this, and you just press on delete and it deletes, or you can just hit delete. It disappears. It's completely gone. Nice. So that's it for the object navigation. So for the sake of this tutorial, for now, if you press Shift A on the display screen, it brings us some options, but we only be focusing on meshes for now. And we'll be focusing on my main use meshes. So let's see this in action. Press Shift A, mesh. We have one, which is the plane. Let's move this to the side, G and X. So it goes across there. Shift A, mesh. We have the cube. Our friend is not back. Shift G and X. Move that to the side. Shift A, mesh, circle, G and X. Shift A, mesh, UV's horror, G and X. These four items for objects are the main ones I use when it comes to modeling. Each one has its own purpose and its own, I guess, personality when it comes to creating. Let's just remove these for now. Take our cube, put our cube back to the center. And now let's go to universal keys. Now, please bear in mind that these things come in handy, one, and two, it's important to remember because it makes your life so much easier. You have your Control C, which is to copy. You have your Control V, which is to paste, although the copy and paste is very rare inside this program. The Control C, which is copy, Control V, which is paste. It is rarely used in Blender, rarely, but when it does use, it basically helps with transferring characters or objects from one Blender file to the next Blender file, right? But most of the time, you'll be using Shift D, which is to duplicate. But that don't say you can use the Control C and Control V. It's fine. You have the godsend, which is Control Z to undo if you make any form of mistake. It saves you a lot. Obviously, we have our friend Control S, which is to save projects. We have the Shift Control Z, which is to redo. If you undo something way too much and you need to go back forward and you don't want to go back and remodel the entire thing, press Shift Control Z, which sends you back to the previous thing that you end up undoing. Right, I will show you examples of that as well. Control J is to join, which takes two objects and squish them into one. Right, and Control P is to parent. So let's go into this and show you what each and every single one does. Starting with our friend. So make sure your item is selected. Control C, Control V, and if you just move it across, now we have two objects. Great, nice. Let's press Control Z to undo that. Undo again. So to undo the movement and undo the piece. Plain and simple. It also undoes selects. So selecting an item also counts as a particular movement. Nice. Shift D to duplicate. Same thing with the Control C and Control V, but Shift D does it faster and better. Control Z, let's go back. You have the Shift Control Z, as I said before, that is to redo your previous undo. Right, so but we don't need to do that right now. It's obviously as well the Control S. Let us save our first project right away. So what I normally like to do, I always keep all my designs in a particular folder. To add a folder, I have to just click on this button right up here. I'm actually create new folder directory. Right? And it instantly creates a new folder that you can name classroom. And it comes here, you double click it, and you save, and let's call this class 1. Save as Blender file, instantly save. So with that being saved, you can go to which part you saved it before, and you open it from that particular file. You can also open it from the actual Blender file. So remember to save often so you don't lose any form of data, just in case the power goes or file get corrupted or pro crashes, because it does happen. It does happen. Ensure that you save as soon and as much as possible. It is fine to double save. It is fine. Okay? Okay. And from there, no matter what you do, if you click this and move this across, press Ctrl Save, Ctrl S, it automatically saves to the location on the previous document. Nice. So let's move on to, I think it'll be parent, which is parent and join. So we have Ctrl J and Ctrl P. Right, so let's first duplicate this cube to show you how this works. So if we select the first item, second item, press Ctrl J, this becomes one complete item. Right, so to merge or join your two objects together, it'll be Control J. So this becomes one object. So let's take a step back and separate them. Control Z, Control Z. So now they are back separate. Do a Control S because we are safe happy. Let's try out the parent. If you select this object, select the next object, Control P, set parent to, and click object. What this does, if you select, still looks separate, yes. But if you move this object, nothing happens. However, if you move this object, the next object moves. So what that does, this is a child of this, or this is a parent of this. So whatever this does, this decides to rotate or move, but not scale. Wait, it scales as well. Oh wait, oh, yeah, scale too. My bad. This does the same. However, you could use this one to be separate. It does come in handy at certain times, but at this point in time, not yet. So let's take a step back. Actually, you know what? Let's just delete that. So we don't need a second cube. So moving on. So we have learned the universal keys. So let me just review the notes. We went to the view nav, seen the layouts, universal keys, and to the object navigation. We've seen the how to put in an object and the most used stuff. Next would be the bread and butter of most of your editing for your models. And yes, it took me a while and a bunch of trial and error to try and get this notes fixed. But it's fine. We'll take our time, go through it one by one. To get into edit mode, you select the object and click Tab on your keyboard. Right here, this is edit mode. As you can see, the right side has changed and one particular option to the top left hand side of the screen has changed, but we're not going to worry too much about the stuff on the left hand side. Just keep that blank for now. Right? That's not going to worry you too much. We have no use for it at this point in time. I have split up the edit options, the edit option types into two categories. We have the ones who already have the number pad and the ones who has enabled the emulated number pad. Right? This one goes all to the ones who have not enabled the emulated number pad. What you'll be using is the number keys that is on top or above the letter keys on your keyboard, where 1 is for vertices or points, 2 is for edges, 3 is for face. And as we can see from this, if you press 1, let's make sure I select everything, 1, it brings up the points / vertices, 2, it brings up the edges, 3, it brings up the faces. Right? And for those who have the emulated number pad on or selected, what you can do to get back the same option, because those keys have been replaced, you can just select the icons that is next to the edit mode. So as you can see right here, this, we have vertice, we have edge, and we have face. And I believe I have explained that properly now. I'm more comfortable with it. That's fine. Let's move on. So now we have some operational keys that we could take our time and go through. So just like before, when we was basically playing around the actual shape itself, in edit mode it uses back some of the, in fact it uses back all of the options of the object navigation. So we have the left click that is selected, we have the A that is select all, we have something new, which is L to select one entire object. We have Alt and left click for loop to selecting a loop part of an object. I'll show you all that as well. You have to right click for options. We have the G, which is move. We have G, then G to move object on a certain point, which I will be showing you all as well. We have the rotation, which is R. We have the scale and some bonus scale options. The movement and the rotation and the scale on particular axes still works in edit mode, which I will show you all as well. So let's go into it, take one step at a time. All right, so let's start with the select all, and select an entire object. All right, so as the name states, if I go into, we're currently on face mode, so if I go into vertice mode, you can select the corners, which is left clicked. Nice. Great. Edge mode. Great. Face mode. Great. And that's how you select each individual part. What's next on the list? We have the select all, which is A. See? Select all, which is A. Now, L to select one entire object. And this only affects the creation if it has more than one object in it. For example, in fact, I'm going to show you an example. Let's just ensure that entire object is selected. Right, hold and Shift D to duplicate and bring this across. Now, hold on, there's a random bug. Okay, cool. Now, let's say I want to select this object here, but I don't want to select this. Instead of going in and select each and every single part, just a reminder, this is just holding Shift and left clicked. So instead of selecting every single part, what you can do is just go to the object, hover over the particular object you want to select, and press L. And this helps especially if your model comes completely complex with a bunch of different faces or different edges, or the case may be. For example, a character's face, and you have the eyes in between. You want to select like the face and not the eyes. What you can do is select the face. Well, put the over the mouse over the face object and just press L. Plain and simple. Good, great. I think as well, I believe I also forgot to mention to just deselect. You just click on the outside. Moving on. Next should be Alt left click, which is a loop select. And that works for both, in fact, it works for all. So on face mode, if you go to a particular corner and press hold on Alt and left click, it selects the entire rim around the box. Same thing for edge mode. Give me 1 second. Right. If you go into edge mode and select a particular point that moves around your current object, it makes a complete thing. I don't understand also why it's not second to the top part. When you hold down Alt, left click, makes a loop straight around. Let's press Ctrl Z to go back. Go into vertices. See? Same loop. Same loop. Same thing for crosshair. If this one loops all the way around, same loop by holding Alt and left click. Nice. Then we have, if you do a right click, we have the options. But we're not going to worry about the options right now. Same thing for the previous one, we're not going to worry about the options, at least not for the time being. Right, let's do a Control S, ensure that our progress has been saved, even though the progress is not much yet, because we're still going through the basics. Great. What's next? Next would be the movements as well. Ahem. Right. Oh gosh, I have tired voice now. I have the handsome tired voice. Oh my gosh. Right. Right. Okay, great. So let's move on. I have the voice crack of 1,000 years. So let's move on to moving and rotating and scaling as well. So let's just select this. You know what? We're going to leave that on the screen. That's all. On those modes, we can rotate, scale, and move just as how we did from before. It's the same controls and everything. Wow, I'm getting tired. So let's see how this works. Selecting on face, select a face. If you scale, see, we're now starting to get somewhere. We can rotate, and we can move. Same thing for the edges. We can scale, rotate, and we can also move. Ow. However, vertices are a little bit different though. You can move them, but you can't scale them or rotate them. But what you can do is select more than one, then you can do the scale, and you can do the rotate, which technically counts as an edge. If you select all of these, it technically counts as a face. Same thing with the edges. If you select all these, it technically counts as a face. And all of those would come in handy as well when it comes to editing and modeling. Great. Now, there is the thing with this GG situation. And it's nothing to be worried about, but it's also something to remember. And it does help when it comes to modeling at certain key points. Let's say we select a point and press G. Nope, that's rotate, sorry. G, 1, so it moves about. If you press G again, it moves on the edges to the next point. And it does help, it does create interesting shapes, and also helps with doing some fine tuning to your models. Even though it's very, very minuscule, it does make a model look a lot better. So G twice does that. So that's G and then G again. So it moves on a point, sorry, on the edge to go to the nearest point. Same thing does for the, if you go into edge mode, G and G. Face. It follows the edge. Cool. Nice. So next, Control S. Save. Moving on. Now let's move on to this little tricky thing. So in scale, in your edit mode, there is times in which that, let's say you're doing something completely complicated. Right? And I think I'm just gonna use my friend Senior Box for an example. A small quick example. I'm gonna, right. So we've been modeling, and for some reason our shape ended up something like this. Right? That's after modeling, doing different stuff to it and trying to make it look nice. And we end up having a shape looking like this. However, we know that this part up here needs to be completely flat on the top. This part across here needs to be flat on the X, and this part here needs to be flat on the Y. What you need to do, and this works for both edge mode and faces. What you need to do, let's do a face one first. Go into face, this thing up here, select the face, pressing scale, because we're fixing the Z first. Pressing scale, right? Don't let it go. Then you press Z, and then you press 0. Let's say it again. Scale, Z, 0. And that works with either the number part 0 or just the normal 0 above the letters. So now this becomes completely flat to the top. Like completely. I mean, it still looks weird because this is how the thing looks. Okay, you can do it for across on this side. Scale, X, 0. For this one as well, scale, Y, 0. It's not the same size as cube, but we still got back a cube. I know it's nice, it's a nice object, and that's what the face. So using this example, let's try to straighten this back up by using the only edge tool. So for this one, well, for these two, no, this one, scale, X, 0. That's now straight. Scale X, 0. So now this is now straight, completely straight on the X-axis. And if we go to front view, it's completely straight. I think check this one. Select this point here, this point here. Go in this area so we can actually see it. Scale y0. So now this becomes straight. I think I'm going to select these two. So that's not connected. Scale x 0. So now this becomes straight. Scale x 0. So it does work with the edges as well, depending on the position of it and how you're viewing it. Great. That wasn't that hard, right? Right? But moving on. So, just as before, we have the right click on movement, which sends it back to the current position. Right click, right click, right click, right click. Great. Now let's move on to another important part where we have E for extrude, I for quote unquote intrude, Control R for loop cut, P to separate, and of course we have our X and delete for delete options. This one is slightly different, but I'll show you afterwards. Let's go with the first batch, which is the extrude, the quote-unquote intrude, my joke, loop cut, and the separate. So here's where the modeling actually comes into play, right? For extrude, you can extrude the vertices by pressing E. You can extrude the edges. Last but not least, you can also extrude the faces. However, if you want to be completely, if you want to be completely straight on which axis you want to use, what you can do is press E to extrude, press Z, which keeps you on the Z axis without moving, so that remains straight. It also work for the Y axis as well. E, Y axis to keep it straight. Or E and the X axis to keep it straight. Now, the intrude, however, it does the same thing what extrude does, but however, it just keeps the positioning on the face itself. So if you press I, looks like nothing happened. We can't pull outward, but we could push inward, which allow the face to scale into itself. And that helps, even though it does the same as the extrude, because we can do the same, we can do the same thing. Press E, right click to remain the same, and just scale it. It does that. But to avoid the whole thing of doing that, the fastest way is just press I. And it does come in handy for certain situations as well. What's next on our list? We have the loop cut, just Control R. What you all was seeing I was doing earlier on. Press Control R, you left click, it does this. What you can do now, either one, you can find a particular position that you want to go on and left click to let go, or if you want it to be completely centered, all you have to do is just right click and it remains in the center, just as before. So subdue movement completely. You can do it as much times as you want as well. Click right click, Control R, left click right click. See, and then it looks like a Christmas box. Great. So, last but not least, we have the separate. What separate does is basically remove a particular face or object or vertex from the actual object itself. For example, we have our two cubes here. Even though it seems like two separate cubes, if we go back into the object mode, this is still one cube, well, one object. However, if I want to separate these now, we go back into edit mode. Let's select this entire cube here with L. You press P, separate by selection. So now these are now two separate objects. That should be golden. And then we can delete this because it don't need to know. Bicep. Now, so going back into edit mode, selecting back this, going back to edit mode. I mentioned that the delete options is somewhat different. And I'm going to show you right now actually. Right, so if we just, let's say, select the entire thing, press delete. Once you press delete or X, it brings up some delete options. But our main focus will be the vertices, the edges, the faces, and the set of dissolves that is down here, which is the dissolve edge and the dissolve vertices. That is it. So what each does, let's say we select, if we want to delete a face, select this, which is the face mode, select the face that you want to delete, or X and face. And now the face is completely deleted. Right, same thing for edges, delete, edge. Right, and the reason that it delete both sides is because the two sides is connected to this thing here. If we change the vertices, could you guess what is going to get deleted? Delete vertices. Yeah, this entire section. So whatever is currently touching that particular point, whatever face is currently touching the vertices or the edge will get deleted. Face is obviously basically deleting the face. Now, let us go to, hold up. We have one more thing that we need to do, which is the dissolve. And now for the dissolve, the only one I use out of all the three, the only one I use is the edge, to dissolve edge. And what that does, it keeps the shape intact. Let's say I want to remove this edge without affecting the shape. Select the edge or the entire loop by holding Alt and left click, hit delete, and click dissolve edge. So that basically removes the edge completely without affecting the actual shape. It does do the faces as well, which I can show you all too. It does do the faces, but not so well. So I advise not to touch that. And it also does vertices as well, but it does that. You want to fall into that hole right now. So I advise when using dissolve, only focus on using dissolve on the edges itself. Delete, dissolve, edges. Great. You're already doing some awesome modeling stuff. Check you. Give yourself a clap. Well done. So moving to the notes. So we managed to get through this big piece of headache. Well done. So what's next on our list would be our friends modifiers. And the main ones I use when it comes to modeling. So let's come out of edit mode for the time being. Let's delete this. And let's bring in a different mesh. So Shift A, mesh, and let's add in a cylinder. Great, great. Let's go into edit mode, delete the chassis face, delete the top and bottom, delete faces. Right, because we still have to see how everything works. Great. So now let's move on to So we are currently moving on to modifiers. To find the modifiers, it will be in the object preference side of the screen, which will be across here. And to find it, just click on the wrench icon. That's right there. Great. So there's three modifiers that I always use when modeling. You know what? Hold on. Let me just take a step back, Shift A, mesh. Let's use a cube instead. Cube will come in more handy. So I can show how it all works. Delete faces. Right, cool. So delete top and the bottom face. Right? So any modifier section, there's three modifiers I always use. One would be the mirror modifier. Two will be the subsurface modifier. And three will be the solidify modifier. So I'm going to go through each and every single one and what they do. It's going to be very, very simple. Right, so let's start off with our friend, the mirror modifier. So our modifier, mirror. And at first it seemed like it does absolutely nothing. In fact, it's actually doing something at this point in time, which is basically mirroring this. And how the mirror works, if we go into top view, this point right here, this yellow point, is the center of your object. However, for us to see the mirror in action, this cube, or this weird looking box, needs to be on at least one side of this yellow point. Let me make sure and just show you properly. Right, now we can see the yellow point. This is small yellow point right inside here. Right, so in order to see the mirror modifier take effect, the cube needs to be on at least one side of this point. So if you hit tab, select the entire object, G, and move this across on the x-axis. As you can see, this is now mirrored across here. So whatever you do on this, the other side does. Everything you do is a complete mirror of it. But we're not done yet. We're not done yet. What we realize as well, on the modifier, we have axis, bisect, and flip. But We are not focusing on flip, we are not focusing on bisect. What we will be focusing on though is the axis. Currently x is selected, so that means it's currently mirrored on the x-axis, as you can see on the red line. But we could also mirror on the y-axis and on the z-axis. But as before, you see nothing happen. However, if you move it on the y-axis, it splits. If you move it on the z-axis, it splits again. So each one, the x-axis, the y-axis, and the z-axis. Because this cube is on a particular side of this yellow small dot. And now look like a hypothesis from Genshin. But we don't question that. We don't talk about Genshin. Next, so let's just remove these things for now. Great. I think I can actually set this back as well because that's gonna bug me if I don't fix it. 7G. I'm just gonna leave this right. Oh. Right. There we go. Great. I'm gonna leave that right there for this time's sake. Now, let's move on to subsurface. And what subsurface does is basically divide your shape into extra pieces to make it more smooth. That's why the square from before, this square, once the subsurface is enabled, it becomes a cylinder. So basically bisects the square to makes it more, which makes it completely more round and more smooth. You can increase the amount of cuts or edges to make it even more smooth. Let's move on to, let's close this off. Let's move on to the last one, which is solidify. What solidify does, if you go into thickness, is make the shape solid. It helps in certain positions to give certain objects depth or some form of solidify. I'm talking against some sense of solidity, as the name suggests. Also, as well, another interesting thing, we can actually combine the tree together to make multiple cylindrical bins, I guess. You could scroll down. Because each and every modifier works good together, but these three are your main bread and butter when it comes to modeling and using modifiers, certain modifiers. Another thing I should explain as well, the reason why it is suggested to use modifiers, or I would advise that you use modifiers. One, reduces the pressure from the graphic card or your processor and reduces the chances of having soft lag. The less vertices, faces, and edges you have on your object or your model is the best bet to not put too much stress or lag on your system, because things tend to get extremely difficult after a while. We're using modifiers to basically negate that problem. Great. So moving on from that smooth tangent, so let's see what is next. We are coming down to the last part of our little model session. The first part of the complete basics. So let's move on to doing our first model. Which should be plain and simple bagel. Using the skills that we've learned and the screenshots that you're taking and the notes, it's going to be very simple and very, very quick. So for our bagel, let's put in Shift A, mesh. Let's use a plane. No. In fact, Shift A, mesh. Let's bring back off from Mr. Cube. All here, Mr. Cube. Good. Nice. So we're going to make a very quick bagel, but using Mr. Cube and the information that we have learned. Good? Nice. Let's go into front view, edit mode. Let's select the round, this round part here, this bottom part here, delete faces. Select this face here, hit delete, and let's click on the only face. So what that does, delete the face only and still leaves the arm outside the rim. Great, let's move on. Press A to select everything. What is left? Let's go back to front view. G, C. Let's bring it down to the red line. That's good. Nice. Let's switch across to vertice mode. This bottom right across here. Press E, Z. So now it remains on the Z axis. Let's bring it up, let's say around 2 points. Right? On this 2 points on the front view, 2 points upwards on the Z axis. Great. Well done. Let's continue again. E, Z. On the second one. In fact, yeah. I could bring it up some more. Great. Let's switch across the top view. Let's scale it in. Press S. Start to move the mouse inside till it looks something like this. Great. Well done. Next. I can do next. Press E. Scale. Well done. So let's say around here. So right now we're just taking our time just to make sure it doesn't look like much yet. It doesn't look like a bagel yet, but it's fine. One thing at a time. Great. Let's extrude one more time. E. Scale, which is S. Bring it in. to rotate the camera, G and Z to send it inward. Sending it inward a little bit more. I'm just judging it. Right, so we're just playing on the controls, going back over. So we're just playing around. We're just going back over what we've learned so far. Last but not least, to front view, E, Z. Realize it past the red line, send us back up. Let it touch right there. And it's fine if it goes below the red line by just a little bit. Let's send it, you know what? Let's send it below the red line just a little bit. Great. So now we have this looking thing. It does not look like a bagel, doesn't it? And that's where the modifiers will come in handy. Add a modifier. Let's add a mirror modifier. And let's put it on the z-axis because here we already have the top part of the bagel facing on the z-axis. So enable the z-axis. Disable the x-axis. It's going to be a little bit iffy if they don't do that. But we have a small problem. We realize that it's currently not touching, or it still looks separate. What you can do, if that happens, click on clipping. And what clipping does, it prevents either side from going through each other or leaving each other if they're already attached. So go back to edit mode, select it, press A, select all, press G, Z, see which is getting separated. Realize it's only center gets hold together. Nice. Press G and Z. So now the center is no longer going into itself. Bring this down. And we start to realize it's at a squish. That's fine. Then you press G and Z again. And now everything is now selected. Let's do this one more time. Great. So ensuring that clipping is selected, tab, go into edit mode, select everything with A. Let's start by moving upwards first, G, Z. Right? So the inside of it is now connected. As you can see, you can't pull out no more further. Now to send it down, the inside will not go any further because it's currently stuck. Right, you move until it's touched and you start to see it squishing. Left click to let go. And you test it, GZ. So it's now connected. Right, and just time it. Have it on that one block there. Let's bring it down some more. Great. So now we have this. Looks like a bowl than a bagel. That's fine. Let's move on to the next modifier, which is the subsurface. Great. Let's increase the levels. Nice. Let's do some final edits because we suddenly realize that this looks a little bit squished. This can still work, yes, but I find it looks just a little bit squished. So this is just me doing a little bit of a touch up to it, just to have it a little bit curved. So I'm going to go back into edit mode, switch into edge view, switch into edge, select this here by holding Alt, this entire loop, go into top view, scale, just to have some form of depth on it. So as well, scale, nice, nice. So back out from edit mode. What we can do now, because we're technically almost done, left clicked. Now here's where the right click will come in handy. When we select this and right click, hold on, right click, and we click on smooth shading, we have our beagle for the time being. So give yourself a round of applause. You have done your first model thus far. So well done. Well done. So next time we will be going, if I get my notes right here, next time will be basic texturing and UVs. So that will mean we get some color onto our bagel, so it's going to be a nice, pretty looking bagel looking thing. It's going to be fun. It's going to be nice. And so, but I am completely tired. It's currently almost 3 a.m. and we have been streaming for the past 2 hours and something. Oh, but we did it. We have done it so far. Ow. Slight mosquito bites. But right. We have officially created our first model, which is a bagel using some of the instructions. Yes, it was tedious at first, but with the notes, even though that you forget, because I do forget at some points, but with the notes that you're taking, you can always go back and find the information. I tried my best to break down as much as possible that even those who don't have skills within design or any previous modeling skills can get a quick and easy hang of it. So next time we will be going into texturing and colors. Very basic texturing and UVs. Alright, so we're going to have a nice pretty color donut with some colors, some shiny colors and whatnot. Good. So I would advise getting any form of color programs, whether it be the one I suggested from the intro screen, which is Inkscape, or any other vector or paint programs. You could also use Microsoft Paint. Microsoft Paint can work with this tutorial. Right? You don't need anything expensive. You don't need any form of free program. You can use any form of free program. Alright, so until next time, we're going to leave this tutorial here for now. Please don't forget to save your progress, or if not, it is fine. You can always use back the notes to check. I will catch you all next time.